That's enough smoke and mirrors. Explain this. Her grip trembled, but she slapped the broken thermostat onto the table, coins rolling across the boardroom's gleaming surface. You have no idea what you're doing to you. I know exactly how long you've been lying. Sweat slid down the side of his neck. I don't answer to you, not now, not ever. He tried to shove the coins back, but they only skittered further away. She leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. It's over. Someone will finally listen. Lights flickered overhead. Security edged closer to the door, breathless with confusion. Across the room, a voice cut through the numb hush. Show them the rest, go on. A hush so sharp it hurt. How did a woman like that end up holding the fate of giants in her dirt-cracked hand? To find out 3 weeks earlier, before anyone had begun to dig. The first snow in the Cascades didn't even try to be pretty. It iced the windshield of Sarah's borrowed Ford, clotted along the wipers, made neon beads of every streetlight from Portland to Gravel Road. By the time she reached the turnoff to the old forest track, her fingers were red and raw from scraping windows she didn't own. Her son Jonah slept in the back, curled under a quilt, his shudder of breath visible each time she risked a glance through the cracked rear view. She counted the cash in her pocket, $13, and whatever tips she found while clearing tables at Marv's Diner. The last check from the farm stand wouldn't stretch to the end of the month. Her phone vibrated. One new message from County Services, a friendly reminder that her temporary housing voucher expired in 5 days. Ahead, tire tracks vanished beneath wind-blown branches. Snow shifted in crescents around tire ruts, evidence someone else still came here sometimes. Her father's voice echoed, brittle from the last time he'd said it. You'll never make it through winter in that tin can, time to move on. But she had nowhere left to move. Last week, they'd gathered in a lawyer's office with harvest-laden snacks and polite grins. Her brother Andrew's tan line stood out, even in October, a beacon from a Florida life purchased with family money. He hadn't looked at her once, not when the attorney unfolded the musty envelope stamped in her grandfather's uneven hand. Oh, the old thermostat, take it, Andrew had joked, lips curled like he'd bitten into something foul. They even want that off their hands. The rest of the table laughed. They passed over the battered mercury thermostat, ugly brass probably from the original build. Heirloom if a relic no one wanted counted. But as she'd thumbed it, Sarah had felt a groove on the back unnaturally precise. And inside, where the coil should balance the dial, she'd rattled something unexpected. Her little finger found a cold ridge and something metallic chinked inside. She'd left that meeting with the thermostat wrapped in paper towel, a target painted where her future should have been. When she later pried it open by the diner's break table, she found not a fuse or spring but 3 gold coins dull with age. Each was stamped with a horse and a year she didn't recognize. 1861, 1874, 1889. She looked up at the tangle of voices in the diner kitchen, felt her pulse leap in her throat. Was it a prank? A mistake? Or was there something she'd been meant to find all along? If you've ever been handed something worthless and felt the world close its doors before you, keep listening. What you throw away says as much about you as what you keep. Morning turned the last of the snow to water, sending ghostly ribbons down the windows. Sarah propped the thermostat on the dashboard and coaxed Jonah awake with the promise of something sweet, though her stash was down to a pair of mints. Back to the old cabin, his voice was thick with mistrust. Thought Andrew said we weren't welcome. We're not, Sarah muttered, turning the key, but that doesn't leave us many other places. The last 4 miles chewed at her nerves. Potholes jostled the car, the brush scalded the paint, and with each dip in the road she remembered the last time she'd seen her grandfather, stooped and distracted beside a pair of muddy boots someone had left on the porch. Lock the doors, Sarah, he'd always say, casting nervous glances at the trees. Never know who wanders these woods now. She ignored the warnings. She was always the stubborn one, always believing in good intentions, even when they left her hanging. When her father had vanished, her mother retreated into silence. When the farm failed, she cleaned houses, folded clothes, accepted every shortfall as penance. And when her brother Andrew convinced her, 30, green, exhausted, to sign papers she hadn't read. "Just routine, Sarah, bank wants reassurance," he'd said with a half grin. She lost everything, house, land, all that security her grandfather's hands had built. Now, empty tank and all, she stopped at the perimeter of the ancient fence hemming the forest. Jonah slid out, planting his sneakers into the slush. "Why do they keep the cabin if no one wanted it?" he asked, eyeing the bowing porch steps. Sarah tucked the thermostat in her coat pocket, because sometimes the easiest thing is to pretend old things don't matter. The door resisted, warped by years of rain, until she braced her knee and forced it open. The inside swallowed light, the timbers thick with mildew, ghostly with frost. She transitioned Jonah to the faded couch by the brick hearth and swept her hand along the wall for the switch. Nothing. The wires had been cut deliberately. She tried not to feel watched. They brought only 2 bags, one of food, mostly canned beans, and the other, smaller, her documents in a plastic folder, a picture of her mother and a letter never sent. It haunted her, the way absence grew into fact. Jonah found an old oil lantern, and ever the 10-year-old detective cranked it alive with 2 shuddering sparks. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Exploring," Sarah said, masking her unease. "Let's check every room, start with the kitchen." Every cupboard was empty, save a single slip of newspaper from 1972, wrapped around a latch. But in the back of the storage closet, above a hook where coats must have hung since her grandfather's prime, she saw the skeleton of a mercury wall thermostat once mounted there, its outline clear, the wall behind a gentler shade. In that moment, she fit the strange, grooved back of her heirloom thermostat to the faded outline. It clicked, magnetic as old habit. She pressed and felt something release beneath her thumb. A tiny compartment sprang partly open, revealing a bundle of fine chains knotted together, each humming with cold, years-old beauty. Jonah's mouth parted. "Is that real?" Sarah's hand shook as she tugged the first free. A strand of pearls, 2 emerald necklaces, a ruby ring the size of her nail, and at the bottom, a diamond tiara too small for anything but a child. She counted aloud, each syllable brittle. "This doesn't belong here, it shouldn't exist." A draft curled past her ear, and Sarah realized the entire house was listening. She closed the thermostat with a snap, vision tunneling. No one had ever told her what her family truly hoarded. They had missed everything that mattered, or intended to. She found the rest of the collection that afternoon, nested inside the thermostat's rear cavity, not just jewelry, but tarnished gold coins, filigreed brooches, embossed pins, all strangely untouched. She pried up the kitchen vent, felt along the dusty eaves, and everywhere she looked, as if conjured from her childhood games, gems waited to reveal themselves. By nightfall, Jonah's eyes glittered with a light she'd never seen. "We're rich now, right?" he whispered as she unwound a silk ribbon from around a sapphire charm. "I don't know, honey, maybe we're just holding someone else's secret." Tucked among the oldest pieces was a note written in a hand she recognized from her grandfather's patent applications. Firm, upright letters, precise as blueprints. "Don't trust the buyers. If something happens, the coins confirm everything. Contact Samuel Irving, the rest will make sense. Keep Jonah away from the war contractors." Sarah stared, heart knocking. Samuel Irving was the name on one of the oldest patent filings, a chemical process her grandfather claimed would change the future of fuel. Her brother had always insisted the war work had been nothing, just government junk, Cold War garbage, forget it. But the slip of paper suggested otherwise. Back on the couch, Sarah traced the stylized SI over and over, the gears churning behind her tired eyes. She had a key, but not the map. She whispered to Jonah, "We can't tell anyone, not yet." He hesitated then, "Not even Andrew." Sarah shook her head so hard her teeth ached. "Especially not Andrew." Several miles off, headlights cut frosted air, out of sight but drawing nearer. They were not the only ones following breadcrumbs. By dawn, Sarah had packed the entire collection into 2 pillowcases, ugly, practical, safer that way. She drove them, bundled, back into the trunk. The cold pricked her knuckles raw. After breakfast, she texted the number on the note. No reply. On a hunch, Sarah drove to town, Jonah buried beneath thrift store hoodies, and found Irving's name half erased on a rusted mailbox outside a cinderblock house. The window was frosted, but someone shuffled behind the glass. She knocked twice, no answer. Again. Finally, a stoop-shouldered figure opened, peering from under a wool cap. "I'm sorry," she started, nerves climbing. "I was told by." The man's eyes narrowed, pupils flickered to the bundle in her hand, then to the child at her side. "You shouldn't have come," he murmured, voice graveled by time. "They're watching, never come here directly." Sarah pressed on. "My grandfather's name was Calvin. He left a legacy. I found this." She urged the thermostat into his palm. He examined it for a long, silent beat. "Did you tell anyone?" "Just my brother knows about the cabin. He doesn't." Irving's face shifted, some brittle wall falling away. "Why bring it to me?" "Because he told me in this note to trust you, please." She suppressed a shiver, recalling Andrew's sneer in the lawyer's office, the way his left hand always covered his mouth when he lied. Irving's hands trembled as he picked at the layered chains, then at the rim of one coin. He tried to tell the truth. He risked everything. But they stole his patent, called it lost, and let that contractor hound him to the grave. Sarah felt Jonah's grip tighten around her jacket. Irving's voice dropped. "The man who stole it, he's still out there, and he's dangerous, more than your brother ever warned. If he finds out you've uncovered the jewelry, he'll do anything to keep his cut with the war contractor clean." A chill slithered up Sarah's arms. "What should I do?" she whispered. He passed her a folded document, confidential stamp faded, but one line visible. Federal Reserve Board Session, Nov. 19, Disputed Patent, Chemical Processes, Review Essential. A 2-week time window. Irving nodded at the thermostat. "That's why you have to hurry. Anything happens to you, all the rest goes with him. Don't trust Andrew, and whatever you do, never ever negotiate alone." Sarah left the cinderblock house with Jonah's hand still clutching hers, her mind tearing apart. Twilight smeared the horizon as mother and son returned to the cabin, tension coiled between them. The road in now wore fresh tire tracks, and she was sure she hadn't left it like that. A truck idled nearby, plumes of exhaust unfurling into blue dusk. Andrew stepped out, arms folded, his Florida smile lacquered over something sharper. "So you're living here now," he called, loud enough for any ghost. "You dragged the boy out too, thought we were done with all this." Sarah stiffened. "You said I could have whatever was left. I'm not bothering anyone." "Doesn't look like nothing in that bag," Andrew said, gaze sticking to the bulging pillowcases. "Dad would have wanted the family to stick together, not keep secrets." Jonah hovered behind her, feet shuffling in the snow. Andrew leaned in, voice low, sweet as battery acid. "If you just signed the arbitration, this wouldn't be a problem. You want to act stubborn or you want to play reasonable, hand over what you found." Sarah squared her shoulders, knuckles whitening. "I don't have anything of yours." He laughed a short, mirthless bark. "Don't lie, Sarah, you were always bad at it. Give me the thermostat and no one gets hurt." She slid her hand back to shield the bag. Her whole life she'd let Andrew talk past her, turn her strength into a cudgel. Not now. Jonah's voice, small but clear, cut through. "You're scared she'll tell the truth, aren't you?" Andrew's expression cracked for a split second, then snapped back together. "I'll give you a day, Sarah. Come clean or I call in the big boys. Simple as that." He retreated to his truck, the crunch of tires on gravel echoing like a challenge. Sarah's heart drummed in her throat. She gathered Jonah and her spoils, barricading the front door with a bookshelf. That night she barely slept, eyes fixed to the shifting moonlight, the ticking of the thermostat like a promise kept and broken again and again. By morning, Sarah began her desperate triage. Photocopies, photographs with her cracked phone, evidence of every coin, every jewel, every faded certificate. She called Irving, whispering, "They know now." It escalated. His answer was hoarse and rapid. "Go to the boardroom meeting. Bring everything. If you want the truth exposed, public, real, you need to force their hand in front of everyone. Otherwise, they'll make this disappear like they did with your grandfather." She called in a favor from the only lawyer left who didn't sneer at the Murphy name, Henry Poole, a gruff estate specialist in Montpelier. His office, cluttered with boxes of case files and one ugly ceramic bulldog, offered little by way of comfort. "My God, Sarah," Poole whispered, rifling through the evidence, "this isn't pocket change. These are museum pieces. The insurance payout alone." She interrupted, voice rough. "Will it matter? They already wrote the collection off as lost, didn't they?" Poole nodded, brow knitted. "The payout was for over $2 million, split between your brother and the military contractor. If this comes out, half the board gets investigated. They'll fight tooth and nail to keep it buried." She wondered aloud, "If I go to the police?" "With what? A nice story, they'll crush you. The only way is to go public at the board meeting, leverage the press. That's when the feds and the agencies have to act." She exhaled, ragged from fear. "How long do I have?" Poole's finger jabbed the date on the patent file. "You've got under 2 weeks. If they transfer the patent before then, you'll lose everything, evidence, legal ground, even the land. It's all tied to this scam." From the waiting room, Jonah's voice filtered in. "Mom, can we go home now?" Sarah pocketed the copies, stuffing them into her jacket. "We can't," she called, "not yet." As they left, Poole pressed a flash drive into her palm. "If anything happens to me, release this. No matter what, stay clear of Andrew and his friends. And Sarah, don't underestimate them." Snow lashed their faces as they climbed into the Ford. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, knuckles bloodless. Jonah turned to her, anxious. "Are we in danger?" Sarah forced a thin smile. "Not if we're smarter than them. We'll be okay, I promise." Andrew wasn't bluffing. That night, someone slashed her tires. The next morning, a man in a military contractor windbreaker knocked on the cabin door just after sunrise. She opened a crack. "Something I can do for you?" "Yes, ma'am." His voice was a practiced drawl, dry as the kindling stacked on her porch. "Heard there's been a disturbance, some items misplaced. Mind if I come in?" Jonah yelled from behind her, "My mom says you can't enter." The man's expression solidified. "You folks got nothing to hide, I'm sure, but these woods aren't safe lately." "Thank you for your concern," Sarah replied, closing the door before her hands could shake. They listened as his boots squished away. Jonah whispered, "They're scared, aren't they?" Sarah pulled him close. "Not scared, just not in control." That evening, as dusk pooled, Sarah dialed Poole. He answered on the first ring. "Bad news. Board moved the vote up. It's this Friday instead. They're accelerating everything." A sick swoop of fear. So soon. Andrew's got the patent lawyer, the military guy, and 2 board members on his side. They're building a wall. Sarah pressed her palms flat on the counter. "What if I can prove the payout was fraud? What if I show everything in front of the press?" Poole was silent for a moment, then said, "If you do that, make sure you've got the federal agencies there. This is bigger than any family feud." The decision pressed in. She could risk it all publicly under burning lights, trusting watchdogs she'd always feared. Or she could disappear. Sarah looked at Jonah. His eyes waited on hers. She unpacked the bag, strewing evidence across the old dining table. Every coin, every chain, the patent papers, even the original insurance claim. Her plan formed in flares. Reveal the jewelry in public. Demonstrate the hidden mechanism in the thermostat. Show the insurance claim was false. Call in the press and the federal commission. Don't let Andrew or the contractor out of her sight. She rang Poole. We do this on my terms, she said, ferocity bleeding through. He agreed, voice struggling not to betray his worry. I'll call EPA, FAA the works, you walk in, don't flinch. Most important, keep that kid close and no sudden moves. If anything looks off, pull out. The morning of the board meeting, Sarah dressed herself and Jonah in borrowed clothes a size too large. They drove to Montpelier, pulling up to the Hydroelectric Cooperative's Glass-and-Cedar headquarters. Inside, the conference room was all glass, oak veneer, and chill. Fluorescent lights turned skin to parchment. Andrew waited at the far end of the table, flanked by the contractor's legal muscle in navy suits. Reporters rustled papers, the board shuffled and cleared throats. Sarah entered with the pillowcase, the thermostat, and the plastic folder of evidence. All eyes followed her. The hush was tangible. She sat, Jonah squeezed beside her, Poole at their side. Let's proceed, intoned the chairman, bored and pointed. Andrew's smile tightened, jaw tensed. Before we waste time, we have alleged here the missing jewelry from 2 generations ago, yes, but as everyone knows, the insurance paid us out. Case closed. Sarah rose. Her voice was stronger than she feared. Not closed, stolen, and I can prove it. She slapped the broken thermostat onto the table. Coins skittered from the hidden cavity, spinning toward the contractor's lawyer. That's enough smoke and mirrors, explain this, she snapped. Gasps ricocheted as everyone registered the coins. The fine chains nodded with emerald and pearl. Andrew tried, you have no idea what you're doing, do you? Sarah leaned in, every humiliation burning to the surface. I know exactly how long you've been lying. He sweated, refusing to meet her eye. This doesn't prove anything. Those pieces could be copies. Anyone could have planted them there, for all we know you did. Poole cut in, voice stern. We have independent appraisals here, dated decades prior. These are the originals. The insurance claim says they were destroyed in fire. I ask, where's the fire damage? The room bristled. The military contractor's man tried to gather the coins, but they only scattered wider. Sarah slammed her hand down. You don't answer to me now, not ever, but you will answer, to the federal board, to the press, and to the agencies I just called in. A reporter at the door fumbled for a camera. Sarah turned to the board. For years, my family lost land, money, generations of faith, while these men walked away with your trust and my grandfather's life's work. This jewelry, every piece, proves their fraud. Lights flickered, tension calcifying the air. Security edged toward the doors, alarmed. Poole nodded to Sarah, show them the rest, go on. The room stilled, all eyes locked on Sarah. She upturned the evidence folder. Patent filings, insurance receipts, original letters, all fluttered down like confetti, each proof sharper than the last. Andrew went crimson, lips trembling. The contractor's lawyer jerked for his phone. Sarah faced them both, voice low and steady. It's over, someone will finally listen. A panic scramble erupted. Andrew lurched for the door but found security blocking his path. Their own orders shifting in real time as the press crowded forward. The contractor sat back, pale as paper, eyes on the glass far wall. Sarah's head bowed just once, a tiny private benediction for the family who'd never see this end. The board broke formation, turning on Andrew, the contractor, even their own lawyer, demanding explanations. Federal agents arrived an hour later. Sarah and Jonah watched from an alcove as the suits encircled Andrew and his confederates. The whistle of radio chatter pricked the silence. The fallout was rapid and unsparing. EPA, FAA, and FDA launched investigations into every transaction related to the patents and the contractor's side businesses. Andrew's lawyer fled the state. The military contractors board collapsed. 2 directors resigned within 48 hours. But true comeuppance comes crawling, slow as snowmelt and twice as cold. Andrew was last seen pacing the edge of a quarry out beyond Mad River, wild-eyed, talking to shadows. Official word was he slipped. Some say guilt snapped tighter than any accusation. He was gone within a week. The military contractor retreated from public view, their former CEO drowned in lawsuits, his fortune vaporized. Both men became cautionary tales, invoked whenever Vermont's old money families met for coffee, careful now to keep their hands clean. As for Sarah and Jonah, news crews tried to hound them. They slipped away back to the forest's hush where spring sun buttered the moss and the maples bled sweet. When Jonah asked, "Do you miss them, the family?" Sarah just told the truth. Some losses set you free. Together they built a home inside one of the giant storm-felled trees, hollowed by time and arching clear toward the sky. She turned it into a retreat for travelers, artists, young families, anyone needing a berth from life's storms. Money trickled in enough, finally, to breathe. The last of the emeralds glowed from a locked drawer. She kept the thermostat on her desk, its gears silent at last. Some ghosts, she learned, wait for someone to open the right door. And sometimes, what returns to you is greater than anything stolen away. If you've ever wondered how far darkness can stretch before someone lights a match, maybe it never really leaves, but it just takes one person to say enough. Keep your secrets safe and your courage closer. The real test is not what you inherit, but what you dare to uncover. Years later, long after the lawsuits had drifted into the old news fog, Sarah kept a kettle simmering by the wood stove watching strangers tramp through her unlikely sanctuary. Some came uprooted by divorce or pink slips, others, like she once was, carrying their stories in battered duffels and eyes full of frost. Each spring, a few maple sap buckets still bore Andrew's initials, burned black and almost faded. She let them hang. Jonah grew tall fast, his shoulders broadening with chores and sun. Some days he'd come in, jeans muddy, clutching wild mushrooms or the scattered detritus of a child's lost nest. "Did you ever think," he mused once, stretching by the fire, "that Grandpa knew this would happen, that you'd find everything in the end?" Sarah smiled, not answering at first. There was so much she had never guessed. How grief and resilience could grow in the same cracked soil, how the right kind of secret could become a kind of inheritance, not of gold, but of grit. "Maybe he did," she said gently. "He hid things where he knew only someone looking for hope would find them." Jonah grinned, propping the old thermostat in his hands. It had become a sort of relic, its smooth metal cooled by years but still bearing the groove she'd discovered in her lowest hour. "You think you'll ever fix this?" he teased. "There's nothing broken in it anymore," she countered and reached to ruffle his hair. "It did its job." Come holiday time, neighbors tramped up the slushy drive, arms full of pie or sod cedar, asking after that big patent mess. The locals were proud. Sarah was now a trivia answer on quiz night, the one whose stubbornness brought the outsiders to heel. She'd only nod, steering conversation toward weather or sap flow, wanting no part of celebrity. One gray Tuesday, Poole came calling, heavier and slower on his feet, but his eyes still shrewd. "Ever think about moving?" he wondered, mug in hand, eyeing the forest's green hush through new double-paned glass. "You could sell this land 3 times over now if you wanted." Sarah laughed, a sound clearer than it had been in years. "Then where would they find me, or themselves?" He shrugged, just saying, "Some people spend a lifetime looking for quiet." She showed him the locked drawer just once before putting the emeralds away for good. "For Jonah," she told him, "when he's old enough to decide what stays secret and what's meant for daylight." Before he left, Poole pressed a card into her palm. "If you ever need to vanish again," he said, half joking, "call me, or better, don't wait that long." By midsummer, the story had shriveled to a fable. The military contractor faded into a rebranded subdivision in Texas, and the last newspaper clipping yellowed under a fridge magnet. But the guests came, some who remembered her face on the news, most who didn't. They swung in hammocks strung between sugar maples, wrote postcards at her battered kitchen table, wondered aloud what it meant to find refuge somewhere old. One evening, as the sun laced gold through the high branches, Jonah sat beside her on the porch, grown now, almost a man. For a while, neither spoke. Crickets took up a heavy chorus. The world spun quietly by. Jonah asked softly, "Do you regret fighting them?" Sarah's hand landed lightly atop his. She squeezed. "No, I'd only regret hiding." He turned the old coin over in his palm, the one marked 1861, its edges dulled smooth. "Do you think there are more secrets left?" Sarah watched the sky darken. "There always are, but you only have to tell what's true. Everything else you get to decide whether to keep or cast away." Night came down, soft and dark. Somewhere an owl hooted. Sarah leaned into her son, breathing in the cool, sweet air. The world wasn't perfect, but it was finally theirs. Upstairs, behind her old desk, the broken thermostat rested in the soft hush, a reminder that not all treasures shine, some just anchor you. Sarah closed her eyes, content to let the past sleep, the future open for whomever dared to dig. And in the quiet, hope, like old Mercury, rose steady and sure, marking time on its own subtle dial. The last embers in the stove hissed as Sarah poured water over them, the end of another evening settling around the house like a comfortable shawl. Jonah lingered in the doorway, sleep fighting stubbornness in his eyes. "I'll lock up," he offered. She nodded, gratitude warm and private. His tall frame moved through the old ritual bolting doors, drawing curtains, double-checking where the pillowcases of their inheritance still hid in the shadows. Somewhere beneath the ordinary rhythms, she heard the hush of everything they'd survived. It sounded almost like forgiveness. In the morning, the woods would be white with new frost. Dee promised Jonah pancakes, promised Poole she'd send him fresh preserves, promised herself that their quiet life was something she could finally allow. A knock at the door startled them both, a soft, uncertain tap. The world outside was ink-dark. Jonah looked to her, questioning, but Sarah moved first, peering through the glass. A young couple, backpacks slung and cheeks wind-flushed, waited on the porch. She opened the door cautiously. "Sorry we saw the light," the man stammered. "We got lost on the ridge. The sign said refuge. Is that for real?" Sarah smiled, slow and genuine. "For real, come in, warm yourselves." Her voice surprised her, so steady it made her ache a little. "You found the right place." Jonah shepherded them to the stove. Sarah ladled cocoa, watched steam swirl above mismatched mugs. The woman's eyes landed on the old thermostat on the wall, its brass face dulled by years. "That's vintage. My grandma's house had one just like it." Sarah glanced at Jonah, sharing a private smile. "Heirloom," she said, "passed down, but it still keeps us honest." As laughter and gentle conversation filled the cabin, Sarah felt something ease inside her, some old tension unwinding, making room for gentler hope. She looked at her son, surrounded by warmth, and saw only beginnings, not the ghosted past, but the fierce, beautiful present. The night deepened, safe behind locked doors and old, silent treasure. Sarah let herself believe that with every stranger they sheltered, every story shared, they reclaimed a little more light. As the wind tapped softly at the windows, she pressed a grateful palm to the thermostat's cool metal and whispered, "We're home."